Welcome to Consulting Talk Live. My name is Russell Pearson, and today we're going to, rather than answer a question, I'm going to show you some sales processes based off a question that I had recently, which is how do you create a sales process and how is it different than what other people are doing? So let's talk to that because the consulting space is quite different than a lot of other service providers. And so back in the day, I've been doing this for 30 years, but I ran a marketing company for 15 years before I moved to this advisory space. And the marketing company sold services. And so with the services, we would basically talk to the client about what they wanted. They gave us a brief. We gave them a price. They would say yes or no, and we would move forward from there. Now, that was selling the invisible because we were actually getting money down. We were actually getting paid before we would create the end product. But the end product would be something like a marketing campaign or a website or a lead magnet or some form of event. We did a lot of event marketing. And so there was like a tangible aspect to the thing that they were going to get. But when it comes to consulting, sometimes there is the untangible or intangible, which is, let's say that you're consulting with someone to put a new sales process in, right? That's relatively tangible, but not concrete. We don't know what it's going to look like. If you're going to consult with someone to put in like a CRM, so a customer relationship management system, that is more tangible because people have a sense of what that is like, right? It's a piece of software. They know what the outcome is going to be. But sometimes you're brought in because the organization wants to increase sales, or the organization wants to, let's say an individual wants to be more confident, right? There's a lot of coaches that help people with confidence. And it is not tangible. It's very intangible. And if it was tangible for the person on the other side, then it might be a little easier for them to have already taken the steps towards it. But the reason consultants really exist is not just to give people answers, but there's two reasons. One, we're bringing expertise and experience to a situation, which is going to help and benefit the decisions being made in that situation, right? So that's a core piece. But now with artificial intelligence and other resources, be able to pull the knowledge of the world into one space, we could pretty much have the majority of the world's knowledge at our fingertips. And how do we go about accessing the best version of that rather than the mediocre version of that becomes the trick. That's information, right? So that's knowledge and knowledge work. That's on that side. Now, if we were just knowledge workers, then we may actually find ourselves in a situation where we became extinct. But the modern consultant is not just a knowledge worker. In fact, the best consultants over the millennia have not been just knowledge workers. They have been guides. They have been mentors. They have been coaches. They have been people who can help people make decisions and take steps. Because a large part of the human dilemma is that people often know what it is that they need to do. And so it's not the knowledge work. They often just need help with taking the step and moving from here to there. And so a large part of the consulting sales process that I recommend is really helping people make a decision about their next step, which means sometimes that shouldn't be with you as the consultant, because you can clearly see by looking at their situation that you consulting with them now is not going to benefit them. And so you come in as this third party, this mentor to the situation, you have a look at it, and then you help them take steps. Now, if the step that's going to be the best step for them to take is with you, then you're going to help them take that step. And so there's a process to that. And so I thought what I might do is I'll just touch on broadly on the process itself and some of the nuances that sit underneath the process. So let me bring the board over. There's a two-step sales process that I recommend. In fact, there's kind of three steps to the whole thing. One is that people need to have some sort of short conversation. In fact, I'm going to redo that one. And look, if you've got questions about this stuff where you're live on the chat, make sure to ask. So this is sales conversations. So the great thing about consultants is that they are magicians when it comes to questions. And really the place that they work is within a conversation. So it's conversational work. So if you don't like speaking to people, you're either going to get over that or you're not going to be a very good consultant, because being able to speak to people and actually help them make decisions that way is a really large part of the process. So sales conversations, there needs to be an initial chat, and the initial chat is not when they know what they want. This is when we're just talking to people randomly out there in the world. We're having conversations with people with all sorts of reasons, and they highlight a symptom, a thing that they're not happy with, that we help with. We can help them with this symptom. And so if that's the case, we'll say, well, I might have an idea for you, and we take them to what I call a priority call. So the priority call is a way to identify if this is a priority for them right now. Is this something they should be working with? So there are 3 ticks that we want to get. And if we don't get these ticks, we don't move people forward. Simple as that. So the priority call is there a gap that we can help them navigate or bridge? Do they have a specific problem that they're aware of that they want to remove? And then finally, is this a priority for them now? Because if it's not a priority for them now, you end up chasing these people for months, if not years, which can happen in some cases. There's nothing worse than having a sale that you think is made and then you're like chasing it for 6 months or 18 months. The priority call stops that from happening. It also stops you from being ghosted. It also stops you from sending proposals to people who are not ready to accept them. In fact, one of my core principles when it comes to the sales process is don't send proposals. Certainly don't promote proposals. In other words, offer them. Don't offer proposals. And don't send lonely proposals. In other words, a proposal without you attached to it, because otherwise they're going to be making decisions without you. The whole point of the conversational sales process is that you are there to help them make a decision. And then finally, we move to design. And design is where we actually would get the cash. Design is a process. And it's a process that I model to look like this with 4 different elements to it. And it's really a 4-step sales process, which is fairly straightforward. And I'm happy to give it to you here, but there is some nuance to it. The first step is we make friends. So there's all sorts of people who talk about rapport building. They talk about matching and mirroring and all these tricks in building rapport with people. But the reality is, if you just make friends, right? Don't be a dick, make friends. And the idea of this make friends step is that people will tell you what's really going on. People will share secrets. So friends tell friends secrets. And so if we can make friends with a person, whether it's like in 30 seconds, just having some form of common conversation with them, whether it takes a little longer, if they're not willing to share with us about what's actually going on in their world, we haven't made friends, and we're not going to be able to actually do our consulting work, because this sales is all for consulting. Now, there are all sorts of models out there for consulting, the big corporates using and all these different things, but they're not training consultants. They're actually training people to pitch and propose. And you don't need to pitch and propose, because that means you're always going to be one of 3 quotes at least. You can actually design with the client, and they're much more likely to say yes to you. So we make friends. Then we move to a diagnostic. So diagnostic. And we also do discovery. So discovery. So diagnostic is about identifying what are the things that are going on right now, what's wrong with that situation, what do they want to change, what do they want to fix, what have they tried, what's happening in their world. This is where we do basically an understanding of what the problem is and why they haven't already solved it. Yeah. And then we get to the end of this. So the end of this one is that they will share secrets. The end of this one is that they are clear that this is the specific problem they want to solve. From there, we move to collaboration, because I always think that it's better to have a collaborative conversation with someone who wants to buy from you rather than pitch at them, because you might pitch something that's got 10 benefits in it and they only care about 2 of them, so they mentally discount you by 80%. Or they find one of the things in your 10 value stack is something that they've had a bad experience before, and it poisons the entire deal. So don't do that. You don't need to do that. You need to collaborate with them on what is the specific outcome that they want to happen and what are the steps involved in that. Now, it doesn't have to be the detailed steps, like the specific, we're going to be meeting up at this day every week and we're going to be doing these specific things. It's just the broad strokes on what are the steps we're going to work through to go from your problem to the outcome. And then finally, it's help say yes. And that's when they have said yes, and it's helping them make a decision about how they're going to move forward, because some people will say yes, but then they can't do it, they can't take the step, and so it's yes, but I've got to do these other things. So help them say yes actually leads them to a point where you are helping them make that decision. So we chat with the people to understand the situation, so we've got something to talk about. We move to priority, which is a 3-step process to identify if now we should be actually having these calls. Then we move to a design process, which is these 4 steps. And at the end of the day, what will end up happening is 2 things. Number one, we will increase the conversion rate over here up to about 80%. Sometimes we can even go higher, but because they've already admitted that there is a specific problem that they want to fix, there is a priority to do something about it. Really, the only thing that can go wrong here is that we've missed some steps, or we've made some mistakes or some assumptions, rather than actually doing the work. If we do the work correctly, 80% conversion rate. But over here, we want to only take 1 in 3 people through the process. That's average. So sometimes it's better, sometimes it's worse. It's not a concrete rule, but the point being that if we take people through when there is no priority to make a sale, then we're going to run into problems here, or even after there, where they go, I need to think about it. And part of the process of being a consultant is helping them with their thinking. So if they come up with, I need to think about it, it usually means we've missed steps, or we now need to do some work to help them say yes. Yeah. So this is the sales process, and really where it differs from other sales processes is that we don't pitch. When we pitch, we're assuming, and we don't need to assume, because a conversation is where we do our best work. Questions are our magic wand or our sword that we actually take to an engagement. Conversations are the battleground or the playing field, right? So this is where we actually do our work. And because we do our work there, we don't have to pitch. We certainly don't have to propose. We do this work with people to help them make decisions. Now, there'll be people here who are consultants who are watching this and say, no, I have to put a proposal forward. They always ask for a proposal. Sure. And there are people who will ask for a proposal. And there is 2 different types of buyers. There is the individual buyer who is buying for themselves, and there is the corporate buyer. And the corporate buyer will usually have some form of procurement process. And if you haven't already been an approved supplier with that organization, then you need to go through that process. But usually what I do in the corporate situation is I ask the person on the other side, if I've done this work correctly, they're now a champion for me. They'll now help me get into the organization. I'll say, what do we need to do to make this happen? Yeah. And if they say to me, well, I need a proposal, then you go, what sort of proposal? What form should that proposal take? What are the other steps that you're going to need to go through, or I'm going to need to go through to get engaged by the organization? When are we looking to start? Really qualifying those things so you can help them manage them. I do see a lot of consultants who are really contractors that will pitch or propose, and then they go, they'll even offer a proposal. They'll get to the end of a pitch presentation, which is not what we're doing, but they get to the end of a pitch presentation and they'll go, now I'll send you a proposal. And the client goes, okay. And so you've just taken control completely out of your hand by giving them a proposal. You've got no opportunity to be there with them when they're making a decision. The whole process of you being a consultant in this scenario is to help them make the best decision right now. And so if you're giving them a document to make the decision, that's not you consulting, right? You're not giving counsel. You're not giving wise counsel. You're actually sending a document and hoping that they will be able to understand it. And what's incredible about these things is because most consultants have expertise and they have deep experience, that they have this expectation that other people have the same level of understanding as they do. And they don't, right? They don't understand, which is why we need to become good. Otherwise, we're going to become dinosaurs. We need to become good at helping people with their decision-making process. We need to become good at helping people take steps. We need to become good at helping them with their human condition so that they can actually be the best that they can be. When we're not doing that, we are trying to make it productized. We're trying to make the process mechanical. We're trying to make it, the written word when we have so many more modalities. The written word is one visual, in fact, or almost audio digital way of communicating with somebody. It's very disassociated. So if we want an associated conversation, which really we should be having with everybody, it should be interestingly, design is made logically, but decisions are made emotionally. Yeah. So helping people make those decisions, we got to tap back into the reason why we're having the conversation in the first place, and tap back into this priority to do it now. So these are the steps. There are many different sales processes out there. We don't pitch, we don't propose, we don't send lonely proposals, which is to craft some beautiful proposal you spent 20 hours on, and then we send it out into the wild world, all innocent and alone, and then people behind closed doors do weird things with it. We don't want that to happen. We want to chaperone our proposals if we ever need to send them, and we want to go with them to the client and help them make a decision. And then the other one is that I often get, well, this person in front of me is not the decision maker. Their boss is the decision maker. I need to provide something so that they can send to their boss. Yeah, completely understand. And so my suggestion would be, number one, get to talk to the boss. Number two, can you offer to share the proposal in person or online, maybe Zoom, with their report, their boss or their manager? If you can do that, then you can actually speak to the person making the decision. If you can't do that, then you're not advising. You're not really consulting. You're contracting, which is a very different thing. You've got a subordinate bringing you in to contract for basically a boss. Your job really as a consultant is to be sort of the Merlin to the Arthur, the left-hand side of the king, so that you can advise them and counsel them as they go through their process to become great. And so you can't do that as a contractor. You're a contractor as an employee. You're in there to do a task. You're task orientated. That's not what consulting is about. Consulting is about outcomes, right? Outcomes through your expertise, and not just through your expertise in your core knowledge and your specialist knowledge, but it's in your expertise of conversation, of questions, of human nature, and about helping people take steps and the processes involved to do that. So my name is Russell Pearson. This is Consulting Talk Live. I would love you to put a question in. So when you do put a question in, you can go to when you do put a question in, I take those questions and I answer them live here on the show. And you can go to consultingquestions.com and you can type in a question there. And we receive them, which is fantastic. We love receiving those questions. And then we answer them here. And there's a whole archive of these shows if you want to go back and have a look. And if you haven't also seen, we've got the Consulting Business Podcast, which is a show we run every week. And we are up to 130 episodes of that, both on Apple and Spotify, but it's also on here on YouTube. So you can check that out. If you're a consultant and you're wanting to improve your game, definitely some really good stuff for you there. If you're a person who's wanting to build their consulting business, then there is more than enough stuff for you there. And then finally, if you're a specialist service provider and you want to move into the consulting space, because maybe you're starting to see the writing on the wall that whether it be artificial intelligence or other emerging technologies coming in to actually take your lunch, you want to be in a different position, then learning some of these steps through either the podcast, these sessions, asking questions, maybe getting involved in the different trainings that I have available in my world is going to be a useful step for you. Until next time, Russell Pearson, stay passionate. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.